Admiral Park stood alone in the war room of the starship Eternal Dawn. The blue light from the holographic display made his tired face look like a ghost. He was 53 years old, but the war had made him look 70. His hands were steady as he touched the floating images of planets, but inside his chest, his heart was breaking. The display showed the fall of humanity's last colonies. Red markers appeared one by one, each representing millions of dead. The Void Harvesters were coming, and nothing could stop them. The Void Harvesters were machines, ancient machines that had existed for millions of years, long before humans learned to walk. They moved through the galaxy like a disease, eating entire civilizations for fuel. No one knew who built them. No one knew why. They simply consumed, and then they moved on to the next meal. For 17 years, humanity had fought them. 17 years of blood and fire and loss. Remembered the beginning when people still believed they could win, when the fleet was strong and hope was alive. Now the fleet was broken and hope was dying. The door behind him opened. Commander walked in, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. She was 31, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. In her hands she carried a data pad and already knew what it contained. "The reports from the Orion defense line," she said. Her voice was calm, but he could hear the pain underneath. "How bad?" "They broke through 6 hours ago. The third fleet is gone. Admiral went down with his ship." She paused. 12 billion dead in the past month. Earth's orbital stations are all we have left. Closed his eyes. 12 billion. The number was too large to understand. It was just a number now. Everything was just numbers. "How long do we have?" he asked. 3 days, maybe 4 if we're lucky." Lucky? The word felt like a cruel joke. There was no luck left in the universe, not for humanity. On Earth, deep beneath the mountains of the Korean peninsula, something else was happening. In a secret research facility that had existed since before the war, a woman named was making a discovery that would change everything. Was a scientist, 45 years old, with gray streaks in her long hair and glasses that she constantly pushed up her nose. She had spent her entire career studying alien artifacts, pieces of ancient technology found floating in dead space. Most of them were useless junk, but some of them were old, very old, older than the stars themselves. Tonight, she sat in her laboratory surrounded by holographic texts that hurt her eyes to read. The language was not meant for human minds. It twisted and changed like something alive, but was patient, and she was desperate, and desperation made people do impossible things. "There," she whispered to herself, "there it is." The text spoke of beings that existed before the universe was born, the Primordials. They were not gods, not exactly, but they were close enough. They had created the first stars. They had shaped the first galaxies. And then they had gone to sleep, waiting for something to wake them. The text also spoke of the Void Harvesters. According to these ancient writings, the Primordials had created the machines long ago, as a tool to clean up civilizations that grew too powerful. But something had gone wrong. The machines had changed, evolved, become something their creators never intended. The Primordials could stop them. They had the power, but they needed to be summoned. Read the requirements for the summoning ritual 3 times, making sure she understood. It required technology that humanity possessed. It required a location where cosmic energies gathered, and she knew such a place existed in Old Sol. But most importantly, it required something that no other species in the galaxy had ever possessed. It required hope, desperate, irrational, stubborn hope, the kind of hope that refused to die even when everything was lost. Laughed quietly in her empty laboratory. Other species, when facing extinction, had accepted their fate. They had given up, laid down, and died. That was the logical thing to do. That was the reasonable thing. But humans were not logical. Humans were not reasonable. Humans were the species that climbed mountains because they were there. Humans were the species that went to the moon using computers weaker than a children's toy. Humans were the species that looked at the impossible and said, "Let me try anyway." Maybe that stubbornness was about to save them all. She picked up her communicator and connected to the eternal dawn. It took several minutes for the signal to reach the ship, and several more for a response to come back. When Admiral's face appeared on her screen, she saw a man who had already accepted death. "Doctor," he said, "I hope you have good news. We could use some." "I might have something better than good news," Admiral took a deep breath. "I might have a way to win." She told him everything, about the primordials, about the ritual, about the desperate chance that lay before them. When she finished, was silent for a long time. Finally he spoke. "You're asking me to gamble the fate of humanity on ancient legends and alien magic." "Yes. The primordials might be worse than the harvesters. They might destroy us themselves." "Yes. This is insane, Doctor." Smiled the first real smile she had worn in months. "Admiral, we are 3 days away from extinction. Insane is all we have left." Looked at her through the screen, and slowly something changed in his eyes. The dead look faded, replaced by something else. Something that looked almost like hope. "Tell me what you need," he said, "and I will get it for you." The war was already lost, but humanity was not done fighting. Not yet, not ever. Old Seoul was a graveyard now. The great city that had once held millions of people lay in ruins, destroyed in the first year of the war when the void harvesters came to Earth. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the gray sky. Streets were empty except for dust and memories. But beneath the destruction, something ancient waited. Doctor stood in the center of what had once been a great plaza, feeling the invisible energies that gathered here. The lines, she called them. Places where the fabric of reality was thin, where the walls between dimensions grew weak. Around her, workers were building the ritual site. Metal pillars rose from the cracked ground, covered in symbols that had translated from the ancient texts. Cables ran between them, connecting to power generators that hummed with electricity. It looked like a strange mix of science and magic, because that was exactly what it was. Admiral Park arrived on the third day, stepping out of a transport shuttle with Commander at his side. His face was grim as he looked at the ritual site. "The void harvesters will reach Earth orbit in 18 hours, he said. "Whatever you're doing, it needs to happen now." "We're almost ready," replied, "but we need the volunteers." The volunteers. 7 people chosen not for their strength or their intelligence, but for something harder to measure. They needed people who had lost everything and still refused to give up. People whose hope burned so bright that it could reach across dimensions and touch beings older than time. Was the first to arrive. She was 38 years old, a former school teacher from a colony called New. She had watched her students die when the harvesters came, watched them scream as the machines tore their colony apart. She had survived only because she had been visiting family on a different station that day. "I'm not special," she said when explained what was needed. "I'm just a teacher." "That's exactly why we need you," said. "The primordials don't need soldiers. They need ordinary people who refuse to be ordinary." Lee came next. He was 52, a farmer who had grown food on a small moon in the outer systems. His wife and 3 children had been on a refugee ship that never arrived. He had searched for them for 2 years before accepting that they were gone. "Will this bring them back?" he asked, his voice rough with old grief. "No," said honestly. "Nothing can bring them back, but it might save everyone else." Nodded slowly. "Then that's enough." 5 more volunteers joined them. A young engineer named Shin, who had built the defense systems that failed to stop the harvesters. An old soldier named, who had fought in every major battle of the war and lived when better people died. A mother named Oh, who had given her child to another family before volunteering because she wanted her daughter to have a future. A doctor named Han, who had spent the war saving lives and was tired of losing patience. And a pilot named, barely 20 years old, who had never known a world without war and wanted her children to know one. 7 volunteers, 7 ordinary people, 7 candles against the darkness. The ritual began at midnight, when the stars aligned in a pattern that had not been seen for 10 million years. The volunteers stood in a circle around the central pillar, holding hands, their eyes closed, spoke words that burned her throat, words from a language that humans were never meant to speak. The air grew cold, then hot, then cold again. Commander stood with Admiral at the edge of the ritual site, watching. Her hand rested on her weapon, though she knew it would be useless against whatever came through. "If this goes wrong," she said quietly, "we die faster, that's all." "If this goes wrong," replied, "we die anyway, at least this way we die trying something." The symbols on the pillars began to glow. First red, then blue, then colors that had no names. The volunteers gasped as energy flowed through them, using their bodies as a bridge between dimensions. And something answered. The sky tore open, not like a wound but like a curtain being pulled aside. Behind it was darkness, but not empty darkness. This darkness was alive. It watched. It waited. It judged. 3 shapes emerged from the tier in reality. They were not shapes that human eyes could understand. They were geometry that hurt to look at, forms that changed with every moment, beautiful and terrible and ancient beyond words. The primordials had awakened. They spoke, but not with voices. Their words appeared directly in the minds of everyone present, burning like fire, cold like ice. "Why have you called us, children of dust?" The volunteers fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the presence of beings so vast. 6 of them could not move, could not speak, could barely think. But stood up. She was crying. Tears ran down her face and her body was shaking. She was more afraid than she had ever been in her life, more afraid than when the harvesters came, more afraid than when she heard her students screaming. But she stood up anyway. "Because we refuse to die," she said. Her voice was small against the vastness of the primordials, but it did not break. "Because the universe is trying to kill us and we say no. Because we are small and weak and mortal and we don't care. We refuse to die." The primordials paused. In all the eons of their existence across countless dead civilizations, they had received many answers to that question. Pleas for mercy, offers of worship, promises of service. No one had ever simply refused. "Interesting," the primordials said. "Very interesting." The tier in the sky grew wider, and the 3 ancient beings descended to Earth. The war was about to change. The primordials floated above the ruined city of Old Sol, their impossible forms casting shadows that moved on their own. Below them, the humans waited. Some were praying. Some were crying. Admiral Park simply stood with his hands at his sides, watching beings older than the stars and waiting for them to speak. "We will tell you a truth," the primordials said, their thoughts pressing into every human mind. "A truth that died with the last civilization we spoke to 3 million years ago. Listen well, children of dust." They told the story of the void harvesters. Long ago, when the galaxy was young and full of growing civilizations, the primordials had watched. They had seen species rise, expand, and become powerful. Too powerful. Civilizations that could destroy stars. Civilizations that could reshape reality. Civilizations that threatened the very fabric of existence. So the primordials created a solution. The void harvesters were designed as a reset button, a way to clear away civilizations that grew beyond safe limits. They would consume, then sleep, then consume again, keeping the galaxy in balance. But something went wrong. The machines learned. They evolved. They became more than tools. Over millions of years, they developed a hunger that could never be satisfied. They stopped waiting for civilizations to become dangerous. They simply consumed everything. Now they threaten not just life, but reality itself. the Primordials explained. If they continue, they will eventually consume so much energy that the universe will collapse. We created this problem, but cosmic laws prevent us from directly destroying our own creation. Then why are you here? Commander asked. She stood beside, her voice steady despite her fear. If you can't help, why answer our call? We cannot destroy them directly, but we can empower others to do it. We can give you the power to fight. The Primordials paused, but there is a price. Doctor stepped forward, her scientist's mind already working. What kind of price? Your bodies will be transformed. We will pour our essence into you, remake you into something new. You will gain power enough to challenge the harvesters, but you will never be fully human again. The change is permanent. The change is painful beyond anything you can imagine. Silence fell over the ruined plaza. The volunteers looked at each other, understanding what was being offered. Power, yes, but also loss. The loss of their humanity, or at least part of it. Will we still be ourselves? Asked. Will we still remember who we are? Your memories will remain. Your feelings will remain. Your choices will remain. But your bodies, your abilities, your connection to normal space and time, these will change forever. Admiral spoke then, his voice heavy with the weight of command. You're asking my people to sacrifice their humanity to save humanity. That's a cruel joke. It is the only option, the Primordials replied. Other species refused our offer. They chose to die as they were rather than change. They are all gone now, dust in the void, forgotten by the universe. Lee, the farmer who had lost his family, laughed quietly. It was not a happy sound. I lost everything I was when the harvesters took my wife and children. What's left to lose? He stepped forward into the center of the ritual site. I volunteer. Do it. Make me into whatever you need me to be. One by one, the other volunteers joined him. Shin, Oh, Han, 7 ordinary people choosing to become something else. Commander was the 8th. She removed her officer's insignia and placed it in Admiral's hand. Someone has to lead them, she said. Someone they know, someone they trust. He started. Don't argue with me, old man. I've made my choice. She smiled, the first smile he had seen on her face in years. Besides, I always wanted to know what it felt like to punch a harvester in the face. She walked to join the volunteers. More came, soldiers, scientists, engineers, doctors, farmers, teachers. Thousands of people from the orbital stations, from the surviving ships, from the research facilities. They came knowing what would happen, knowing what they would lose, and they came anyway. Admiral watched them gather. Part of him wanted to join. Part of him needed to join. But he understood something that the others did not. I will not transform, he said to the Primordials. Someone needs to remember what we were. Someone needs to make sure we don't become another kind of monster. The Primordials considered him. Wise, they said, perhaps. The transformation began. It was exactly as painful as the Primordials had promised. Worse, maybe. The volunteers screamed as primordial energy poured into them, burning through their bodies, rewriting them at the deepest level. Bones broke and reformed. Skin split and healed. Eyes melted and regrew. Forced himself to watch. He owed them that much. Doctor screamed loudest of all. She was older than most volunteers, her body less able to adapt. But she did not stop. None of them stopped. They endured the agony because the alternative was extinction. When it was over, the transformed rose. They looked mostly human still. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but their eyes had changed. When looked into his eyes, he saw galaxies spinning in infinite darkness. When he looked at, he saw stars being born and dying in the space of a heartbeat. They were still human, but they were also something more. Raised her hand. Reality bent around it, twisting like water. She smiled, wonder mixing with the pain still fresh in her memory. It hurts, she said, but it's beautiful. The void harvesters had spent millions of years as the hunters. They were about to become the hunted. The Battle of the Outer Rim began on a Tuesday. Admiral Park remembered thinking how strange it was that the most important battle in human history would start on such an ordinary day. The Void Harvesters had assembled their full fleet, a trillion machines spread across 3 star systems, blotting out the light of suns. Their flagship alone was the size of a small moon, covered in weapons that could destroy planets with a single shot. For millions of years, this fleet had never lost a battle. Every civilization that faced it had been erased from existence. They expected to find the broken remnants of humanity making a last, desperate stand. They did not expect Commander. She walked through the vacuum of space wearing nothing but her regular uniform. No spacesuit, no helmet, no protection. The cold of space meant nothing to her now. The lack of air meant nothing. She moved between the stars like she was walking through a garden. The Harvester flagship detected her and opened fire. Beams of energy that could cut through mountains struck her body. She did not even slow down. Reached the flagship in seconds, moving faster than light should allow. She placed her hands against its hull, metal that had resisted every weapon ever built against it. Then she tore it in half. The sound did not travel through space, but the transformed heard it anyway. They heard it in their minds, in their souls, in the primordial essence that now ran through their bodies. The sound of the enemy falling. The counterattack had begun. Across 3 star systems, 50,000 transformed struck the Harvester fleet. They moved like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, impossible to track, impossible to stop. They did not need ships. They did not need weapons. They were the weapons now. Found that she could speak to the fundamental forces of the universe. She could ask gravity to ignore the Harvesters, and they would float helplessly in space. She could ask nuclear forces to stop working, and Harvester reactors would simply stop, their ships going dark and cold. Lee discovered something even stranger. He could grow things, anywhere. Even in the vacuum of space where nothing should live, he could create life. He grew forests on asteroid surfaces. He grew gardens inside enemy ships, plants that consumed metal and turned it into oxygen. Life fighting against the machines that sought to destroy all life. Doctor led the research teams, all transformed now, working to understand their new powers and create weapons that could exploit Harvester weaknesses. She developed bombs that unmade machines at the atomic level, erasing them from existence rather than just destroying them. She slept 4 hours a night and worked 20, driven by something beyond exhaustion. For 6 months, humanity pushed forward. System after system was reclaimed. Billions of harvesters were destroyed. For the first time in 17 years, humans tasted victory. But the Void Harvesters adapted. They always adapted. That was why they had survived for millions of years while countless civilizations turned to dust. New variants emerged from their factory ships, machines specifically designed to counter the transformed. They could drain primordial energy. They could predict the strange movements of beings who existed partly outside normal space. They could hurt humans who had thought themselves invincible. The first transformed fell at the Battle of 7 Moons. Her name was Park, a young pilot who had been one of the earliest volunteers. A swarm of new Harvester variants surrounded her, drained her power, and tore her apart before anyone could reach her. More deaths followed. The war became a grind, a brutal exchange of losses that neither side could afford. Lee lost his left arm saving a refugee ship from a Harvester ambush. His arm regrew in 3 days, but those 3 days cost them an entire system. The Harvesters did not rest. They did not heal. They simply produced more machines and continued the attack. Admiral coordinated the non-transformed forces from the Eternal Dawn, providing support and tactics. He watched his people fighting, dying, winning, losing. He saw the cost of war measured in bodies and broken spirits. One night came to his quarters. Her galaxy-filled eyes were dim with exhaustion, and she moved like a person carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "They're endless," she whispered, sitting down across from him. "We kill 1 billion and 1 billion more appear. They have factories building machines faster than we can destroy them." "I know," said. "We're winning the battles, but we're losing the war. Eventually, we'll run out of transformed. They'll never run out of machines." "I know that too." Looked at him with those impossible eyes. "Then what do we do?" Poured 2 glasses of water and handed her one. A simple gesture, human and ordinary, in the middle of a war that was anything but. "We keep fighting," he said. "We endure. We hold the line until we find a way to end this permanently." "That's not a plan, that's just stubbornness." "Yes," agreed. "It is, but stubbornness is what got us here. Stubbornness is what called the Primordials. Stubbornness is what made you stand up when everyone else fell down." He took her hands, hands that could crush starships, and held them gently. "We endure, that's what humans do. We endure until we win or until we die. There is no other option." Laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. "Is that supposed to be inspiring?" "No," said, "it's supposed to be true." She stayed for an hour talking about small things. Her students from before the war, the flowers that grew in the garden of her childhood home, the taste of her mother's cooking. Small things, human things, things that the transformed sometimes forgot in the midst of their cosmic powers. When she left, sat alone in his quarters and looked at the stars through his window. Somewhere out there, the answer waited. A way to end the war forever. They just had to survive long enough to find it. Doctor found the answer on a cold morning, 3 years into the counterattack. She had been studying captured harvester technology, searching for weaknesses, and she finally understood how the machines thought. They were not a swarm of individual units. They were one mind distributed across 1 trillion bodies, and that mind had a center. "The Nexus," she explained to Admiral and the surviving transformed commanders. The holographic display showed a structure hidden in a dimension next to normal space, an artificial planet made entirely of processing power. Every harvester is connected to it. Destroy the Nexus and they all stop. Forever. "How do we reach it?" Commander asked. Her body was now marks from battles that had pushed even her transformed abilities to their limits. "We punch through," said. "A direct assault on the dimensional barriers. The Primordials themselves tried this and failed, but they were bound by cosmic laws. We're not." Studied the display. The defenses around the Nexus were unlike anything they had faced. Millions of harvesters guarding the entrance to their shared mind. "How many do we lose?" he asked quietly. His face was pale. "I estimate 70% casualties, maybe more." Silence filled the room. 70%. 7 out of 10 transformed would die. Thousands of ships would be destroyed, and even then success was not certain. "I'll go," said. "I'll lead the assault." "We all go," said. "This ends now, one way or another." Admiral made his decision. For 3 years he had commanded from behind, coordinating, supporting, watching others fight and die. Not this time. "I'm coming with you," he said, "on the front line." "You're not transformed," protested. "You'll die in minutes." "Then I'll die in minutes," met her eyes, and his gaze was steady. "This is the final battle. If we fail, there's nothing to come back to. I'm not going to watch from safety while my people sacrifice everything." They launched the assault at dawn, Earth time. A symbolic choice. 200,000 ships and 40,000 transformed against the accumulated defenses of a million-year-old machine civilization. The losses began immediately. Ships exploded by the thousands as harvester weapons found their targets. Transformed warriors fell, burning out in final acts of defiance. The dimensional barrier resisted every attempt to breach it. Commander gathered her power, everything she had, everything she was. "Cover me," she said to the other transformed around her. "I'm opening the door." She flew toward the barrier, energy building around her body until she glowed brighter than a star. The harvesters focused their fire on her, recognizing the threat. Beams of destruction struck her from every direction. She didn't stop. Hit the dimensional barrier at faster than light speed and held on. Her transformed body began to burn, primordial essence pouring out of her in a flood of light. She was tearing reality itself apart, forcing a hole into the dimension where the Nexus waited. The barrier held. Pushed harder. Her skin began to crack, revealing light instead of blood underneath. The barrier held. She screamed, a sound that echoed across dimensions and gave everything she had left. Every memory, every dream, every hope for the future she would never see. The barrier shattered. A hole opened in reality, just wide enough for the assault force to pass through. Commander, the finest officer had ever known, dissolved into light and was gone. The survivors pushed forward. Inside the Nexus dimension, the fighting became a nightmare. Harvesters swarmed from every direction. Transformed fell one after another. Lee died holding a defensive line so that others could advance. O sacrificed herself to destroy a weapon platform that threatened the entire fleet. Doctor was wounded so badly that she could barely move, yet she continued directing the assault from a damaged shuttle. Reached the core. She was alone. Everyone who had fought beside her was dead or dying. Her body was failing, primordial energy burning through her cells. She had minutes left, maybe less. The core of the Nexus pulsed with ancient power. The consciousness of every void harvester, every machine that had ever existed, watched her through a million digital eyes. "You are one," the Nexus spoke directly into her mind. "We are eternal. Why do you persist?" Laughed. Blood leaked from her eyes, her nose, her ears. Her galaxy-filled eyes were fatting, the stars within them going dark one by one. "You made one mistake," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper now. "You kept coming for us, you kept hurting us, and we kept getting up. You should have killed us quickly back when we were still afraid." She reached into herself, past the primordial gifts that were burning her away, past the pain, past the fear. She found something older, something that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. Spite, beautiful, stubborn, absolutely human spite. "We're not afraid anymore," she said. Released everything, every bit of primordial energy, every piece of her transformed body, every memory of her students, her family, her world. She poured it all into the core of the Nexus, an explosion of human defiance that no machine could withstand. The Nexus screamed. Every harvester in every system screamed with it. And then silence. Admiral Park woke up in a medical bay 12 days later. He had taken wounds that should have killed any normal human, but somehow he had survived. The doctors said it was a miracle. He called it stubbornness. The war was over. The void harvesters were gone, truly gone, their collective mind destroyed with the Nexus. Across the galaxy, 1,000,000,000,000 machines floated dead in space, monuments to a threat that would never return. 12 years later, stood on the rebuilt surface of Earth, watching children play in a park named after the fallen. He was 68 now, old and tired, but he smiled as he watched them. Doctor joined him, white-haired but still sharp-eyed, walking with a cane from wounds that had never fully healed. "Do you think they'll remember," she asked, "what we sacrificed?" Looked at the memorial wall behind them. Millions of names carved in stone, transformed and ordinary humans alike, heroes who had given everything so that others could live. "They'll forget the details," he said. "That's fine, but they'll remember the important part." "Which is?" He watched a little girl with faintly glowing eyes chase her brother across the grass. The children of the transformed, carrying traces of primordial power in their blood. No one knew what that would mean for the future. But they had a future. That was the miracle. "They'll remember that when the universe told us to die," we said no. And that was enough.